Yeah, oh, come on. Rock and roll dope and fucking get in the streets. I mean, you can't approach the White Panther Party without a sense of humor, you know? I mean, on the one hand, we were serious political revolutionaries who wanted to overthrow the government. On the other hand, we were on acid.
My take in the MC5 was that we could express this frustration with the slow pace of change, with the contradictions, with the injustices that we felt, and we could do it through our band.
Dig out the jam, motherfucker!
I mean, we wanted to rewrite society. We wanted to build it from the ground up, you know, to tear everything down and start over, you know, and do it right this time.
And motherfucker, of course, was not only a paean to the language of black Americans, in which motherfucker is a key word. Said motherfucker, it was like dropping a 20-pound bomb of shit in the middle of a church service, you know?
The MC5's Kick Out the Jams was actually a hit on local radio. And at the time, you could burn herb ceremonially on a lone road on the highway somewhere. I remember a particular night when Kick Out the Jams came on the radio, and we beat living hell out of the dashboard. And truly, this was, you know, the id of the nation. It was the screaming, angry, libidinous howl from, it was Allen Ginsberg's howl to a beat.
I was part of an entire generation, people my age, who believed that the country was going in the wrong direction. And then to experience polarizing events, to go through the rebellion of 1967 in Detroit and hear the city of Detroit at war for a week, to deal with the contradictions in the Vietnam War. That, you know, here our government is saying we have to go over there and fight people that have nothing to do with us, that have no impact on our lives whatsoever. I guess if they're coming through the Windsor Tunnel, we're there, but they weren't coming through the Windsor Tunnel.
The anger and frustration of young white Detroit was part of a nationwide uprising, a second front fought on home soil in which American youth went up against the authorities in cities across the land.
The police were just the front lines, but I mean the school principals, the congressmen, the city council, all authorities. The last thing they wanted was turned on youth. They wanted youth who would turn off and go along with the program.
We were under constant pressure from the Detroit Police Department and later the state police. And then, you know, federal government got involved, the FBI. We entered into their sphere.
The Detroit authorities decided it was time to take action and take out the man they regarded as the Pied Piper of the city's youth.
Goodbye.
I believe the use of marijuana lost to silencing. But if you give 2 joints to this little hippie chick who turned out to be an undercover agent, that gets you 22 life. That's what he was facing.
Sinclair was sentenced to 10 years jail.
It was for 2 joints of marijuana. hardly a crime. Certainly not something that you need to keep someone segregated from the public.
They took John away in handcuffs, and we were like lost sheep. We didn't ever expect that to happen. We thought, God, he would get sentenced and get a appeal bond, and we'd get him out. That didn't happen. They were so dead set in locking him up that all of a sudden we lost our leader.
Obviously, he couldn't continue managing the band, and it was right at the time, right at the point when the MC5 needed to make the step from being a local band to being, you know, on a major label and, you know, be on tour and, you know, make calculated, smart decisions. And there wasn't anybody there to make the decisions.
Whilst their leader languished in jail, the MC5's progression was put on hold. But the influence of their revolutionary, acid-drenched rock had already reached some unlikely places in Detroit.
They just called themselves the white niggas. You know, so I mean, they were really gone. Kick out the jams, motherfucker. They were like the ones we all got branded by, you know, because they were really the bad boys.
George Clinton had originally come to Detroit with the Parliaments to audition for Motown.
Our notion of black music until George Clinton was Motown. Motown was our local music until one of our school dances, this guy showed up with his band, and they came to lip sync I Want to Testify in the upper gym of our high school. And we looked at him cross-eyed like this was the world's first black hippie as far as we knew.
Down, so doggone low, have to look up at my feet.
George is a genius guy. He takes from everything. And they were just part of this wildness. You know, I mean, they were not your run-of-the-mill Negroes. You know, they had another destination. And then they saw the MC5, and then I think they started taking acid.
Joe, been delicious to me.
Berry Gordy had turned the Parliaments down, so Clinton opted for a radical change of direction.
Yeah, Temptations on acid. By the time Testify came out, Beatles and the Rolling Stones, the English invasion had started. So we realized, wow, we're a little bit late for Motown itself. And so we said, well, it's time for us to change.
Combining rock and soul to create groundbreaking funk, Parliament Funkadelic occupied a strange middle ground in Detroit's racial mix.
George Clinton is like the other side in some ways of the MC5 coin, in that he took Detroit and spun it. The Funkadelic wouldn't have been that without the flamboyance of white rock.
We were too black for white folks and too white for black folks. But the audience that we did have stuck with us, period. And every year there would be more and more with the colleges. It always got new set of kids every year.
You know, those were the people he mowed over, were stoned white kids. Black kids were probably listening to something else as the mothership took off around the country.
What black musicians were doing was just incredibly important to my group, the Stooges. It was the only music around that sounded better than the damn English music, which was so very good. But black still sounded better. It's still, they trumped it.
George Clinton wasn't the only act in Detroit to benefit from the MC5. The Five had a little brother band, another bunch of white kids from Detroit's metropolitan fringes.
As London has Oxford, Detroit has Ann Arbor. The area functioned economically as an educational center which fed the transport and war industries that were centered in Detroit.
No fun, my
hell of an easy place to get a band going. There was loose money floating around the university. There were church groups that were only too eager to get the sinful activities under their roof where they could watch, you know. And the Stooges played a lot of our early gigs at a Unitarian church.
For another day.
The Stooges opened for the MC5 at the Grandie Ballroom, but instead of revolutionary rock and roll, they were an avant-garde outfit with a wild stage act.
We loved the MC5, but there was no way we could be like the MC5. We had to do something original, something our own. That was a big part of Iggy's job, and he did a really good job at it. We were as high energy, dedicated and driving and tough, but different.
Some people really liked it and some people really didn't. And some people began to approach the stage, wanting to be our fans, wanting to get near us. And some other people wanted to stand up and say, "Fuck you, this is wrong, you know, you can't do," you know, it was really like, you're ruining everything, you know. We're on the verge of a new age here, we're taking over, we don't need you.
Well, it's 1969, okay. Walk across the USA. It's another year for me and you. Another year with nothing to do. It's another year for me and you. Another year with nothing to do.
It was just mayhem. It was pretty much just having one riff and just going off on it and letting it go wherever it goes.
Now, last year I was 21. I didn't have a lot of fun.
If there was a large crowd of people in the room and they weren't sure how to let things happen to them, then I had to give them a little help. Or we would have had a non-event, which would have led to a non-career. Yeah.
The Stooges would develop a totally new, primitive sound inspired by Detroit.
When I was in elementary school, we had a field trip to the Rouge Industrial Complex. There was a machine that would just drop a piece of sheet metal. Wow! I wanted to make music. I thought it should sound like that. And I loved it. It was so impressive. It was power.
So messed up, I want you here.
That one piano note driving and driving, and the sleigh bells putting those dins, putting that, you know, big din of sound over simple music. It did sort of have kind of an assembly line robotic kind of feel to it.
And I'll lay right down in my favorite place.
Detroit people are good people, they're smart people, but they're tough people. And the music they wanted was tough and hard and driving.
Be your dog, and now I wanna be your dog.
It was an answer to all the florid excesses of pop and back to this elemental, almost primitive feeling. I want to be your dog. To speak of Detroit, Motown was the apotheosis of the extended chord. But Detroit rock and roll came along and said, to hell with all this finery. Let's go back to the basics. And I think Iggy was as raw as it ever got.
The Stooges' primitivism harked back to Detroit godfather John Lee Hooker, but instead of inner city blues, their music oozed adolescent suburban boredom.
Out of my mind now, Saturday night, 1979.